It's Wednesday, August 8th. It's Paul Joseph Watson. This is INFOWARS Nightly News. Coming up on the show tonight.
Tonight, a gun owner saves a cop's life by shooting a deranged man in early Texas. Then, a federal court upholds the herding of demonstrators into free speech zones. Meanwhile, the Washington's blog reports that Homeland Security coordinated an 18-city police crackdown on Occupy protests. Plus, full spectrum evil, the secrets of global domination. Special report by Alex Jones. And Rob Dew talks to Liz Reitzig of rawmilkfreedomwriters.com. That's up next on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Top story tonight, Parkinson's sufferer arrested for not smiling at Olympic men's cycling race. The Spectator seeks an exoneration after he claims he was arrested for not smiling during the 2012 London Olympic men's cycle road race. Mark Worsfold, 54, a martial arts trainer who suffers from Parkinson's disease, wants a letter of exoneration after what he claims was a gross overreaction on the part of Surrey police. Worsfold explains, "I was sitting minding my own business before I knew anything. The police grabbed me off this 7-foot wall, threw me to the floor and cuffed me. So all I saw the cycle race was between the feet of the people from the pavement." And basically this guy's got Parkinson's disease. His face is expressionless. He can't have an expression on his face. And according to The Guardian, Worsfold says Surrey police, quote, questioned him about his demeanour and why he had not been seen to be visibly enjoying the event. They arrested him on charges of breach of the peace, saying Worsfold's behaviour, quote, caused concern. So there you have it. I mean, you know, we pour ridicule and scorn on Stalinist North Korea for arresting people who don't display the proper level of public grief. You know, in the aftermath of the death of Kim Jong-il, they cart them off to concentration camps if they don't cry correctly. And yet we've got almost the same thing now happening in Britain. This guy who physically cannot smile because he's got Parkinson's disease is sitting watching a cycle race, and the cops arrest him for not visibly enjoying the event. I mean, it was an actual breach of the peace. They said he was actually protesting because he wasn't smiling, you know, like a smiley face slave throughout the event. And it's par for the course because this Olympic Games in London has been used to hijack a sporting event and basically turn it into a huge pageant and worship of the state. And, you know, there's Union Jacks everywhere, there's St. George's Cross flags everywhere, because the people have been permitted, they've been authorized by the government to fly them. You know, so long as it's worshipping the state, worshipping the royal family, if you fly those same flags outside of the authorized, permitted time period where the government says it's okay, then you can be branded a racist. There's actual cases in Britain where people have flown the St. George's Cross flag and been ordered by their local councils to take it down because the flag was deemed offensive to minorities. So now it's official. If you don't exhibit the behavior of a slave who's lost the ability to think for himself and hasn't been completely brainwashed in this pageant worship of the state called the Olympic Games, with all its attendant Nazi-like rituals, you know, carrying the flame through the towns and all that, as we've spoken about before. You know, if you don't fawn over people who throw big sticks and jumping into sand pits and ride bicycles, then you will be targeted by the thought police. Man arrested for not smiling during the Olympic Games. Can it get any crazier and more North Korea-like than that? Here's another crazy story. Abortionist sees aborting ugly black babies as a service to the taxpayers. Now, they got this video of a pro-life Christian group confronting an abortion doctor. The doctor says his abortions save taxpayers money, prevent shootings like the one in Colorado, and rid the world of ugly black babies. So let's go to the clip.
Okay, you get it?
You would rather profit off of those
No,
children?
I'm not profiting. I, as a taxpayer, do not wish to pay for those babies to be born and brought up and kill those people in Colorado. Go ahead and pay for that. Let me see you adopt one of those ugly black babies, okay?
We do.
If you tell us, we'll adopt them.
Yeah, go ahead. Adopt those babies, okay? Take them off the taxpayers' money, okay?
Give us a chance to adopt them.
So there you have it. Basically, they confront the abortionist, and he says, why do you want all these ugly black babies? Taxpayers just going to have to pay for them anyway. And then, of course, they all go on to commit mass shootings like the one in Colorado. Makes perfect sense, right? Well, it goes right to the heart of what we've discussed many times, which is what abortion is all about at its foundational level, which is modern-day eugenics and racism. Of course, you can trace it back to Marie Stopes, and even before that. Marie Stopes was this big women's rights activist who is celebrated in Britain. They put a face on the stamps and everything. And she was the person who helped open the first abortion clinics in Britain back in the 1920s. And by the 1930s, she kept herself busy by writing love letters to Adolf Hitler while advocating compulsory sterilization of non-whites and other people with, quote, bad character. This is the woman that's the big denizen of the women's rights movement in Britain. And now her charity, Marie Stopes International, advertises in women's magazines through these public relations articles, encouraging women under 30 years old to be sterilized so they can't have kids. And all the women read this, and it's all very trendy now to get sterilized before the age of 30. And basically, while she was busy writing love letters to Hitler and saying how great his population control policies were, she was setting up all these abortion clinics in poor areas of Britain. And who did she leave her estate to when she died? Well, the Eugenics Society, better known today as the Galton Institute, which, according to its own website, promotes funding, quote, for the practical delivery of family planning facilities, especially in developing countries. So in other words, the same organization that once advocated sterilizing black people to achieve racial purity in the same vein as the Nazis, as Marie Stopes wrote her love letters to Adolf Hitler, is now bankrolling the abortion of black babies in the third world. And of course, you can trace the same trajectory back to Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood. Of course, they're in the United States. They also set up all the abortion clinics in the poor areas, in the areas where black people lived. And Sanger was on record as a racist to advocate the sterilization of black people. And of course, she was also part of the Galton Institute, formerly the Eugenics Society. So no surprise that modern-day abortionists now cite the necessity to get rid of, quote, ugly black babies as part of their job, because that's the bottom line about abortion. It has its roots in racism, in the elite's war against the poor, which makes it all the more ironic that today abortion is supported by the loving, liberal, trendy left, who accuse everyone else of being racist while upholding something that has its very foundations in racism. Moving on to global news now. Russian general denies reports he was killed by FSA. Russian General Vladimir Petrovich denied reports he was killed by Syrian rebels on Wednesday. Quote, I wish to confirm that I am live and well, he told reporters in Moscow. He did not mention when he last visited Damascus. Quote, my phone hasn't stopped ringing all day, he told Russia's Interfax news agency. The Free Syrian Army, of course, commanded by al-Qaeda forces, the new good guys, announced Wednesday that its men had killed a Russian general who was an advisor to former Syrian Defense Minister Daoud Raj. Raj himself was killed in an attack in Damascus several weeks ago. And once again, you've got to hand it to the London Guardian, because, of course, after that glowing article last week in which they celebrated and praised the fact that al-Qaeda is now running the rebels, you know, training them to make bombs, meeting with the FSA, quote, every day. Well, today the Guardian had a headline which read something like, you know, Syrian rebels kill Russian general. So they've gone from basing events in Syria off of random anonymous tweets sent in by dubious activists, you know, and adding the proviso, this cannot be confirmed or verified, to just brazenly now reporting false events that top Russian generals have been killed because they're so desperate to big up these Syrian rebels who in actual fact are losing most of the major battles. They lost another one in Aleppo today. Media isn't keen on reporting that. So they've just now resorted to pumping out outright lies and known disinformation. This Russian general turns up and says, what are you talking about? I'm alive. I'm in Moscow. So it's funny, isn't it, that when the Syrian rebels announced they've killed TV reporters like they did last week, the Guardian isn't really that interested in it. You know, when the Syrian rebels go into tribal areas and slaughter whole tribes who won't bow down to these Al-Qaeda, NATO-backed rebels, the loving lefty interventionist media isn't so interested in that. When they actually don't kill anybody but just lie about it and claim they did, then they report it as gospel. So again, the Guardian playing its role as a 24-hour rolling mouthpiece for the NATO-backed insurgency in Syria. And don't forget, of course, that now according to the Guardian, the Council on Foreign Relations and Rand Corporation, Al-Qaeda are now our allies. You know, we were never at war with Eurasia. The terrorist attacks are good and moral. Slaughtering people in cold blood is good. And they're basically getting the job done. Of course, they won't mention the fact that the Al-Qaeda fighters were put there by NATO, by the puppet Libyan government in the first place, others coming in from Iraq and Turkey. But simultaneously, they're citing the presence of Al-Qaeda fighters in Syria as a reason to invade. So it's all, you know, completely Orwellian again. Down is up, black is white. But so-called Russian general killed turned out to be a completely bogus story, no retraction whatsoever from the pro-NATO media. US news now, gun owner saves cop's life by shooting deranged gunman. This is out of guns.com. Now here's another story, basically of a citizen using a gun in a positive way to prevent a potential massacre, which is why you'll never hear about it on the network mainstream media. It all began innocently enough, states this report, as a squabble over dogs. David Michael House, 58, and Iris Valentina Kalachi, 53, were both residents at the Peach House RV park in central Texas. They were also dog owners, and their poochers allegedly had a nasty habit of relieving themselves on the lawn of neighbor Charles Ronald Connor, 58. And so briefly what happened was the poochers relieved themselves, shock horror, on his property, and Connor goes absolutely nuts, grabs his gun, shoots dead his neighbor. The woman in the other neighbor, who was the woman, goes off running and screaming. He guns her down cold blood execution style. So when the cop arrives shortly after, Sergeant Stephen Means, he's also coming under fire from this deranged nutcase. He's shielded behind his car, whereas Connor is more protected as he stands behind a nearby tree. So basically, another neighbor comes out with his gun, Vic Stacy, and it looks like the nutcase is actually going to kill the cop because he's bearing down on him. He's got better protection. Looks like he's going to waste the cop. So this other neighbor takes out his legally owned firearm and basically guns the nutcase down, saves the cop's life, and probably saved more people's lives based on the insanity of where this situation was leading. So, of course, when the police arrived, they arrested the guy who saved the cop's life, but he explained to the other police that this guy had actually saved his life, stopped the murderer, and potentially stopped a massacre. So again, it's just like the old guy in, you know, the Florida library where he gets his concealed carry out and chases off the armed intruders, shoots at them. And it's another case of a positive use of the gun, which is why the media are never going to touch it, because they're locked in this campaign to demonize the Second